Hey, welcome back to Freedom Hillbilly. And today we're at the workbench. We're going to take a deep dive, comprehensive look at the seat mechanism for your 97 Ford Exploder. So stick with us. The one on the bench here that we're going to look at came out of a 95. So this seat mechanism was used probably from 95 through 2003. They're all similar in that era anyway. If yours is bound up and you're having trouble with it, you might be able to repair it and not have to go to the salvage yard and get another mechanism. Mine was bound up, but I had two, so I just swapped them. So what I'm trying to show you is how it's put together. Now there's some destruction involved. So in order to disassemble this thing and put it back together, it's not as straightforward as unbolting and rebolting. There are rivets that need to be ground off, drilled out, punched out. You can still do it, and we'll show you how. So the first thing we want to do is give you an overview here. So these two rails are what the seat sits on, and bolts too. This is the front. You can see where the bolts go into the frame here and here, and that's the back, and they bolt into the floor there and there. There's three motors, and I have it marked out which terminals control which motor. So this is number 1, number 2, number 3, corresponding to the dots here. So there's the key. You can see the key is the flat top on this side. So number 1 is this terminal and that terminal. So these two terminals by my thumb. Motor number 2 is on my left side here. Here and here. Terminal number 3 is here and here. These are bidirectional, so that you put plus to one and minus to the other, and then switch it minus to one and plus to the other, and you make the motor go one direction or the other direction. I don't know which is clockwise, which is counterclockwise, but you'll figure that one out, I'm sure. So that's how you can operate this, and you'll need to operate this to get at some of the screws and pins and rivets to expose them to get at them. But first let's cover what motor does what. So this first motor turns this screw here, which moves this arm back and forth. That arm's connected to this rod here, and it just rotates this clockwise or counterclockwise, which in turn makes this back part go up or down. So basically this motor controls the back up and down. Motor number 2 controls the front up or down. So this is motor number 2 in the middle here. It's connected to this rod, into this sleeve, connected to this arm, and then pivoting connected to this, which is the front of the seat. And when this rod rotates, it moves this up and down. And finally, motor number 3 here is connected to these two rods, this rod here and this rod here. And when it rotates, it turns this rod, which moves this slide back and forth. And that piece, this piece right here, is connected to the bottom here. Well, I've drilled these out, but these were rivets like this. Okay, these were metal rivets through here. The bottom part of the carriage stays in place, and this top part of the carriage moves back and forth because this piece over here is riveted to the stationary part of the carriage. So how do you take this thing apart? Well, like I said, there's going to be some destruction involved because there's rivets and there's knurled pins. Usually the motor that gets stuck is number 3 here, and it binds these are bound up and it's not moving back and forth. So you can move motors 1 and 2, and what that can do is make this channel go up and down, and as it rotates about this point, it will reveal this hole here, which houses this roll pin So this pin holds this gear knuckle in place, and you need to knock it out. And to get access, you're going to have to move this pivot out of the way so you could get your hammer and your punch to knock this pin out so that this is not held captive. But this is still being held captive by the two rivets on the side. But the first thing you want to do is get these pins out. The second thing you want to do is get the pins that hold the sleeve in here. So this is what you're after. It has a little knurling on it, as you can see. And that knurling holds it in place. So you're going to have to get it in position. So you got the hammer, the punch, and you get that pin out. You can also get a cold chisel and get the flange of this pin, so you can get the flange of that pin and knock it, whatever it takes. So by taking this sleeve out, you're going to be able to pivot this mounting bracket here, or plate, whatever you want to call it, channel, and get access to other things. So now you'll notice I have a bunch of these E-clips. Let's get a close-up. So these E-clips go in these grooves on the rods on both sides, and they don't need to come off. So you could keep them in place, and it'll save you some time and effort. I took them off because I didn't know what I was doing, but you'll know what you're doing because you're listening to me. There's 4 screws holding this whole motor assembly in place. We can go after those next. Access to those 4 screws are through there's 2 holes here on the side. They're T27. So there's 1 and 2. These screws are made of steel. So you might want to get a magnet and just get them out. There's 1 and 2. And those come out just like that. These are just vinyl sleeves, these 2 here. And there's 1 here, and there's 1 here. And those just protect a wound cable that is the motor shaft. So let's pull this out and take a closer look. And this just comes out, you can just come out nicely like so. This comes out just like that. This is the vinyl sleeve, keeps the grease in there. And let's clean the grease off of this. This is a flexible wire shaft. And the ends have been ground down square and then welded so it doesn't start fraying apart. You can see that. And that's what all of them are like. So they just come out. You don't have to be worried about breaking them. They're flexible. You don't want to kink them though. So there's that one. And there's that one. Now, all right, so let's set that aside. So what's next are these rods. And the problem with this one was it got so rusty that the rust in the captive nut here, it's a plastic nut, for some reason it was binding it up. So the way you get these rods out, we showed you there was 2 rivets holding this aluminum piece to the rail there. And what you need to do is get your grinder, grind off both sides. So grind off the heads on both sides, this side and that side. Then drill a hole through it, okay, so that it gives some relief so that you can bang it out. So you get the hammer and bang that out. And there's a view of it. And you won't be able to center it perfectly, but take as much material as you can without going over. And then just bang it out. Now it'll be in there pretty good because, again, this is steel and it's holding it to aluminum. So you're going to have a galvanic reaction, corrosion, and it's going to be there pretty good. So you're going to have to persuade it. So you want to use like a number 24. It's a mid-grade Tanya. So this is just a threaded rod that goes through the captive nut, which is plastic, and that doesn't come out, you can take this apart so that you can, you could unscrew it. You don't need to take the plastic out unless it's broken for some reason. Here you can see what I've done is I've marked it out with an arrow. You can mark it back or front. I took a punch and stamped 3 triangle marks. And it's just basically to key this so that things can go back together in the same way they came out. So now if your rod has been really rusty, you can go ahead and clean it up. What we're mostly interested in is this gear knuckle right here. Let's take a closer look at that. Well, there's a little ring that holds the 2 halves of the plastic housing together. There's also a screw that you can't see when it's in place because it's face down like this. And that's a 1/4 inch hex head screw that holds the plastic housing together. And it comes right off. Just don't lose it. And then we have a little ring that kind of holds it together as well. Keep it from breaking, I guess. They must have had some issues, so they ribbed it and put that. And that just is a friction fit and could come out with, a screwdriver like so. So don't lose it. You can see this is where you put the screwdriver, the flat bladed screwdriver in to rotate it manually to get it going. Now the only reason you'd have to take this apart to the extent that I have is if it's bound up or if you've stripped, or to check to see if you've stripped the gear in there. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and take it apart. And there we go. And be careful because there's no springs in this. And here's one piece. It's a little metal disc. Let me clean it up. And this little metal disc goes in the back like that. And it just basically is a wear plate for the back of the gear. But you don't want to lose it, so let's just set it aside, put it in there. Metal sleeve is, well, it's a metal sleeve, but it's a bearing surface in there, right? Let's just set that down. So this is the main gear. It's plastic, and there is a little washer on the threaded rod side. So be mindful of that. Again, it's another thrust bearing surface. So what you want to look to make sure is all the teeth are there, that they're not chipped or broken. And as you can see, this plastic, it's made of nylon plastic. This one's in pretty good shape. But you do see signs of weather cracking over here and over here. But it's otherwise in good shape. Now, there's another gear. The other gear is this little guy here. All right, and again, there's a little bearing in there, a thrust bearing or sleeve. Well, I don't know what's the proper mechanical name, but this one is also plastic. I know it's really dirty. You can't tell. Let me try and clean it up a little. I don't know if it's made of the same plastic, but it's certainly dirtier. And again, there's a little washer on this, so you gotta be careful of, you don't lose those. And basically, we're done. That's all there is to it. The only thing that we had to destroy was the rivets that hold this nut, basically the threaded rod nut, to the chassis. The only thing is, if your motor is bad, then you're going to be stuck in the salvage yard wrestling with a seat, just like I did. But at least you have some options. So thanks for watching, sticking to the end. We'll see you on the next one. Hellbilly out.